Two other things.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Can everyone be upstanding? We will start our meeting, as is our tradition, with a pledge of allegiance. As you're able, could everyone be upstanding? We will start with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So we have a very chock-full event tonight. We have two wonderful speakers. We're going to start with Donna Colorio. We're going to be talking about Common Core, and of course it's timely since school is going to be starting soon. We need to be armed with knowledge for our children going back to school. We'll also have Pat Burke, who will be talking to us about smart meters. As I said, and I've written hundreds of places, they have smart meters and Common Core, and we have common sense and smart citizens. So, I'll leave you with.
Thank you, Matt. I'm Donna Colorio, and most of you know me. I am the founder of a new group called Common Core Forum. We started this group around March. I am an educator. I've been with the Quinsigamond Community College for 24 years. I am a 24-year-old union member. I know that sounds wild, but I am. And I have a daughter who's in a public school right now. And also, I was a school committee member for 2 years. So I have a kind of an array of expertise on the level of education policy. So around December, a friend of mine encouraged me to start and organize a group that would fight Common Core in the state of Massachusetts. As you know, we read about some of the other states, Ohio, Maine, Arkansas. They all have groups that know Common Core, Stop Common Core. So we started a group called Common Core Forum. Common Core Forum is on the web, commoncoreforum.org. We also have a Facebook page, and we also have a Twitter account. So we post lots of really interesting things. So when I started the group, I started it by just people that were interested through the Facebook pages. And at this time, we're talking March, April, May, June, July, okay, about 6 months now, we have over 2,000 members that are either on a Facebook page or on an email list. And some of you are on my email list because you get emails from me. And we have over 100 activists that when we have our meeting every 2 weeks, that actually physically, like you're coming here, come to our meeting. And the last meeting we had over 45 activists, and we have a place in the state where we go. Last week we were in Norfolk, that we all travel throughout the whole state to come together. We have phone conference calls. We have a steering committee, so we're very organized. The one thing that we have that I think we're very proud of is that we accept no donations, so no one can buy us, okay? So that's really important, because if someone gives me $500, you feel obligated to them. So Common Core Forum accepts no donations. Now, if we're having a speaker and I have a bucket here and someone wants to, like you have there, and wants to throw in money, I don't know where that money's coming from, so that's a good thing. And that's how if we have to raise money for speaker series, which I want to talk about in a little bit. So I'm not going to go into all the nitty-gritties of Common Core, because I think most of you already know. Did anybody here listen to Rush Limbaugh today? Raise your hand if you did.
Busy.
Did you hear me? In the second hour.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, second hour. Okay, so I'm driving. I'm going to tell you the story. So I'm driving to meet my mother at Panera's. And I'm driving on one of those back roads. And all of a sudden, Rush is talking about the indoctrination of the school-age kids. And I'm infuriated at this point. I'm like, And I have this example, you know how you kind of have a conversation with talk show hosts in the car? They don't know you're having it, but you're having it with them. You know?
Yeah. All the time.
Okay, so I was having my conversation in my head, and then I said, well, I'm just gonna call because I probably won't get through. So the first time, you know, it's busy. Second time it's busy. Third time, Sturdley picks up. He goes, yeah, all right, what do you have to say? So I said, okay, this is it. And he goes, and I gave him my example. He goes, you're the third caller, but you know what? You're gonna be the first caller. I'm putting you right on.
Whoa!
So I pull over the car, and I say, oh my God, I better write my notes really fast. So I scribble my talking points, and I'm ready. And I just told him how it was. And my basic point was that my daughter attends a public school, and for her AP class, right now she has 3 books to read this summer. One of them is Hemingway. Okay, classic. We're all with that, right? English, classic. You get that?
Yep.
It works, right? Second book is World is Flat. Anybody know that book?
No.
Okay.
Thomas Friedman.
Yeah, okay. So it's a journalist
Fiction.
that wrote about economics. Okay.
Yeah.
But pretends that it's real. And the third book, you're gonna love this one. Now we're talking English, right? English, capital in the 21st century. Anybody hear about capital?
You're not talking Donna Colorio, are you? Pickety. Capital with an O or an A?
What? Capital. Capital in the 24th century. It's by Pickering.
Pickety or
Pickering.
Oh, French.
Okay, first it's a French economist. Okay, Marxist. Okay, so first of all, the book's 600 pages long. My daughter has no previous knowledge of economics, so this is going to be her first exposure to economics. It's really kind of, I think his book is, it shouldn't be capital, it should be Economics My Way, because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, I'm not infuriated she's reading capital, because if she was in an economics class in college, I'd be like, oh, you know, that's okay, let her read that, and let her read something, you know, so she understands. If she had Economics 101, macro, micro, you read this book next. She said no previous economics. So I'm building up to the story with Rush. So I go on and I talk about Rush. I talked to him about these books, and I said, I'm very disturbed. So last night, I said to my daughter, honey, have you heard about the beheading in the Middle East? And she said, oh yeah, I read about that in my economics book. She goes, America is the problem.
Really?
So that's what got me to call Rush, because he was talking about that people think that America is the problem. So now remember, AP is supposed to be the best of the best. We are indoctrinating kids, you know, to say that this is, in fact, the truth. So this is Common Core. Common Core says that you need to have 50% of the reading has to be text reading. Text reading is not literature. Okay? So if we were reading, you know, before you were reading Hemingway, and you're reading all these classic literature pieces, you know, now you have to read text pieces. So this, I don't know if it was I don't know who decided on these books, decided that they would read 2 economics books. Now they could have read, the year before they read on the environmental books, okay, fake environmental science, of course. So what we're getting now is we're having people that aren't even qualified to teach fake science or fake economics, and now has books that these kids are going to think, like my daughter, who's very bright and listens to me, I think, probably not now, most of the time is now going to believe that this is in fact the truth. So this is a real life example of what's happening with the indoctrination of our kids. So Common Core has been started off in 2010. It's national standards written by 2 trade organizations, implemented or bribed by the Department of Education to have waivers of No Child Left Behind, and to have money that attaches with it. So while we were all barbecuing in 2010, summer of 2010, our state, Deval Patrick, and our Commissioner Chester, who is the Commissioner of Education, decided to take on Common Core in our state without any of us knowing about it. No teacher input, no parent input, no nothing. You know, they say they had open discussions about it, but that was after the fact, after they had accepted the grant. So teachers at that time said, oh, higher standards, love this word, rigor, beware of that word, rigor. You know, oh, it's gonna make our kids, you know, smart. Who doesn't want our kids to do better? We all want our kids to do better. So the talking points were very, very, very misleading. So what happened was, the teachers started to say, okay, we want more rigor, and there was like 74% approval rating from like Massachusetts Teachers Association for Common Core prior to the implementation of the Common Core. They just saw the talking points, they saw what the Department of Ed was saying to them. So once the standards became implemented and the teachers started to have to do this in the classroom, you find out that this was an example of some of the things that was happening in the classroom. And now, according to the Rasmussen poll, Common Core implementation, now that it's been implemented, the teachers are rebelling against it. It's gone down in its approval rating, and this was just a July poll. I don't have the exact numbers on me, but you can, if you look up July, it was 18th Rasmussen poll, you'll see how it has declined. And also too, the Massachusetts Teachers Association in their June meeting decided to have voted on a no confidence on the PARC, which is the assessment test associated with the Common Core. And just recently they elected a very liberal president of the MTA who opposes Common Core. So this is not a right or left issue. This is a right and wrong issue. This was the 1%, the elitists from Washington, the Pearson Educational Publishing Company, who is responsible for the test. It's going to make billions on this test, and the test is made to fail kids. So many kids will fail the test, so then they have to take it over again, which means the school districts has to keep paying to have the kids take the test. So remember, this test is not created by teachers in Massachusetts. It was created by a publishing company. So this is an example, and I'll pass this around, of what the old math was that we all learned, because I'm looking at ages around here. I think we're all, about a couple of us are not my age, but you'll realize that this is the way we used to do math, and this is the Common Core way. Okay, number one, I have no idea if my daughter was in grammar school right now, I wouldn't even know how to teach her, you know? She's out of it, and, you know, like I said, she's in high school, so it's a little bit less complicated. So, all to say is we formulated this group, and we had some really targeted areas. Now, we could have gone after the, okay, we don't want Common Core. Of course we don't want Common Core, that's not the point. The point was, how do we get rid of Common Core, and how do we do it in a very strategic way? The way that we decided to do it was we would attack the PARC test. Now the PARC test is the testing consortium that Massachusetts is in a trial basis to. We won't be voting on it. The Department of Ed will be voting on it in 2015. So what happened is in the spring, they had some trials. I think 12,000 school-age kids throughout the state were tested in this PARC. And what's important to know is that once we got a hold of some of the information, and I'll pass this around about the PARC, current information about how long the PARC test takes, we decided that we would, and when I say we, I'm talking my activist group, we would petition, and we would go after the school committee members to let them know that they had the right to decline PARC test. That they could say, we want to stay with the MCAS. That became, just that little bit of information, and we have 300 and something districts, so we contacted all 300 districts via email, and we let them know we had a legal opinion from the Department of Ed that said the school committee members had the right and the responsibility to decide whether they wanted to be MCAS and PARC, not the superintendent who was receiving his talking points from the Department of Ed. If you can kind of, I wish I had like a chalkboard like Glenn Beck, I could be writing this out right now. So we got through to many, many, many school districts, and based on our facts, based on our hounding, based on everything, out of the 300 and something districts, we believe we had a major victory. We had over 60-something% of the districts, either that voted for the MCAS or decided not to vote at all, which means by default they go with the MCAS, that are staying with the MCAS for the year 2014. Now, the commissioner felt he had a victory because he does Common Core math. He just took about the two groups that voted. We took the groups that voted Park and MCAS, and then we took the group that didn't vote at all because they defaulted back to the MCAS. That means they didn't want to take a controversial issue up, so they just stayed with the MCAS. So we held victory at 60-something%, and we released a press release declaring our victory. So now we're in full mode. We decided that for this year we're going to go after the districts that have the park, and that's about 150 districts. We are now in the process of establishing leaders from each district to go out in the community, and we will give them tools to work with. We'll teach them how to, a lot of people are going to stand in front of the schools with the signs on the first day of school, and we have a lot of different, districts doing different things. And we figured if we can tilt that scale just a little bit and show that we do not want this park test and why, then I think we're going to declare another victory. And then we're going to take those activists, let's say we've got 4 or 5 activists in every group, and we're going to take those activists and we're going to turn them into school committee members. Because that's where the real decisions are made on the local level. So I was telling Matt that some of the things I wanted to talk about tonight wasn't necessarily what is park and what is Common Core, because I believe you all know that, and if you don't, you can ask me some questions. I really wanted to give you a little bit of hope that we are out there with a real strong strategy. Just recently, I was in contact with Ohio, who has been like about a year ahead of us in this, and we're in conversation with working together with them to aid in maybe some things that we may not have full knowledge about. On the 17th of September, we, let me just try to think of what Republican group it is. Oh, I don't even know what group it is. Okay, well anyways, a Republican city committee is doing a rally, which we're supporting at the State House. If anybody here would like to come on September 17th. And we have a national speaker, Peg Lucas, coming. If you haven't heard her, take her name down and do some of her things. So that got me thinking, said, oh wow, Peg's gonna be in from Pennsylvania. Wouldn't it be great if we could get her that night to speak at a forum for our group, Common Core Forum, because we had Duke Pesta the first time. I know, Ken, you came, right, to the Duke Pesta? Did you come? No?
I don't think so.
Who came to the Duke Pesta? I know.
I was there, I filmed it.
Oh yeah, Chris was there. Okay, well, Chris was there. I know, I get kind of confused who comes and who doesn't come. So we put on these
Well, we
speaker.
all look alike.
Right. Speaker. No, it's not that. It's really names. So speaker series. The next one is going to be Peg, and it's on September 17th at night at 7 o'clock. The venue is yet to be determined. I mean, I have 18 Grafton Street if I want it. I'm not sure it's going to hold the people that we expect. We got about 160 at Duke's event, so I'm sure with Peg we'll get about 160 to 200. So that's one thing that we're doing. Then the other thing that we're doing, this is a very exciting day up in Maine. Maine, I'll tell you this, this is another cute story too. So I was on vacation in Maine, and I was in a little store, and I call it the hippie store. So it's like a flashback to the hippie era. And it's about as big as this room, and I saw this woman, and I thought they said the woman was the owner. So of course I started talking to her, what a great story you have. And she said, oh, I'm not the owner, my daughter works here. I said, oh, yeah, 16 years old, same age as my daughter. We chit-chat, and she said, oh, I'm gonna be really sad when my daughter goes to college. And I said, well, I've got a purpose when my daughter goes to college. I'm fighting Common Core. And she looks at me and she says, I'm the second person in charge of fighting Common Core in the state of Maine. And I was like, woohoo, this is great. So Kristen and I have had several conversations, and she put me in touch with Heidi, who is the #1 person in Maine fighting Common Core, and they put together an event called the Tri-State, it's a Tri-State whole day of Common Core speakers. Now they did this at Notre Dame University in Indiana, just back in, I think it was in February, and it's probably a lot of the same caliber speakers there. So this is really fascinating. They're going to do a little, I think a donation of $15, and that's going to include lunch. But this is in York. It's not too far up. It's not like way up in Maine. So it's going to be exciting. I'm going to speak for about 10 minutes there just to tell people what we're doing in Massachusetts. But I'll pass this around. This is another opportunity. And please, I don't have the PDF of that, but we have it posted on a Facebook page, Common Core Forum, and because it's an open group, you can repost.
I'll spread it everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean,
What's the third state done?
what?
What's the third state?
Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts.
You have something in New Hampshire. Awesome.
Yeah, well, there's a woman from, I think, Cornerstone something or other that works. I mean, I know these people, I read their stuff, but we haven't all met. So it was kind of a fluke sort of thing. Plus, they have Sandra Stosky. Some of you have heard Sandra Stosky, Jamie Gass from Pioneer Institute, and Peg will be there. And there's a lot of really good speakers that I've never heard. I've only read their blogs, so I'm very excited to be there that day and participate in this. So, what was I going to say? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a grassroots coalition on the ground to stand out with signs, to go to rallies, to hand out flyers. You know, some of you may or may not be involved in the elections, because I know sometimes that's not your thing. But if you're not involved in an election, in the primary, and you think you would feel brave enough to stand in front of your local, polling place and talk to people as they come and say, do you know what, and we really want to push the park issue, because the park is what we can all align on. The teachers union can align on it, we can align on it, and once the park is in place, doesn't look good, guys, because it's too enmeshed. But if we can stop the park in Massachusetts, and we can start to work on doing the standards, we can start to say, okay, now let's look at the standards. But if we do not get at the park, then what's going to happen is we're going to have some serious problems. So that's what we're really going to look for, and that's what we're doing. So, just bear that in mind. So if you're not working, please email me and just let me know I'm on some of those things, some of those flyers. If not, just come up afterwards. I'll give you my email address. We really need people out there, grassroots, very grassroots. And we have the facts behind us. It's a no-brainer. And we have the talking points that are not the tin hat talking points. We mention things that are very factual, and it should appeal to most of, the parents. It's not, these are things that parents care about. They care about more time on learning, and this is actually the park is taken away on the time on learning. They're concerned about their kids being computer literate, and how can they do a test on a computer. They care about this special ed students. So these are all very important talking points, and we're putting together the key talking points to address some of the districts. And one of the things that I've talked about is, I was talking to a senator the other day. Of course, I wasn't getting too far with him, as we know. And I said, he says, I voted for Park. I said, okay, let me ask you this. If you have a business, right, and in 4 years, 2010, this is 2014, that's 4 years, right? You get where I'm going? Your business lost 43% of your customers, or 43% of your income. Would you call that business successful, or would you call that spiraling downward? Would you call that a loser? What would you call that? I said, well, that's Park. Since Park was started off, it had 23, 24 states that was in their consortium. But because of such the disaster that Park has been, we're down to now, I think, 11, maybe 10 states. 43% drop in that. That's a great talking point. Because when you talk, and so you say, so do we want to get in Massachusetts on a sinking ship? Do we want to get with a consortium or a testing company that's failing? We're number one in the country. Do we want to go down that road? And these are the points that even the very Democratic liberal senator said to me, We need to talk. Now, I don't know if he's gonna change his mind, but he's willing to talk to me about it, okay? Because we are on a sinking ship right now. We've got the facts behind us. Parents wanna know this. Parents think that Park is the next thing coming. They don't realize it's not. It's failing. Park is failing, Common Core is failing. States are pulling out left and right. We are getting on a sinking ship. It's best that we stay with the MCAS and revise our MCAS right now.
I was speaking to Mike Valenzola last night on my radio show, and one of the things that he had mentioned is he had been speaking to some business owners, and one of the things that business owners do is they have people from kids from vocational schools come in and do apprenticeships. They start to work. It sets them up for that path into career. The individual that Mike was speaking to had said that over the years he has seen a dwindling of the aptitude and the caliber of student coming in as an apprentice into his business. It's gone from a student from 10 or 15 years ago coming in pretty much knowing what to do and they can pretty much just go and do their job, to where this person now has to invest time, money, and effort into teaching that student something they should already be knowing. And so as this, I mentioned this because of what you just said to the person that you were speaking to, mentioning about if you were running a business.
That's the talking point said, look at what's happening, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, the facts are that Massachusetts is #1 in the country. Even if it's not the best, we're #1 in the country. Okay, we're also in math and science in a test that we take internationally. Massachusetts stands on its own as a country, and we compete against Taiwan, China, and we come in second, third in the world. So globally, we have some of the best students in the world in Massachusetts. Now, interesting enough, but I don't have the statistics, and this was quoted by Sandra Stosky, so I'll just repeat it, is that when we implemented the Massachusetts standards in 92, when we did the reform, 92, 93, 60 districts, 60 out of the 300 and something, to date, still have never adopted the Massachusetts standards. Now that means, and I know this is getting kind of muddy here, and I don't want to get into technical, that means we still don't even have cities that are on track with the Massachusetts standards, never mind, we're jumping right into the Common Core. So instead of looking at Massachusetts standards and saying, let's revise them, we're #1 in the country, where can we tweak it, blah, 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 blah. These are something that we could look at. And the other thing that's interesting, and that's a perfect example, is that when Massachusetts does a, when the Massachusetts does the MCAS, there is know that, kids go score, we all know that, kids go, oh yeah, you know, I passed, or I'm, you know, proficient, you know, they know where they are. Those scores are set by Massachusetts. So if we want to up our scores a little bit, boom, boom, and bring our students up, what do? It's presented to the Department of Ed, it's tossed around, we have committees, blah, 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 and we up our scores. Now, we are in a consortium, all right, with 10 other states. One being Mississippi. Now, I'm not going to rag on Mississippi, but Mississippi is not in the top of the education, and you know, they have their own standards. So now, Mississippi, I will guarantee you, Mississippi will not say, yeah, that's great, Massachusetts, let's have those scores really, really high. Okay? In Arkansas, they're going to go like, yeah, great, we're here, we're just going to jump right up in there, and all our kids are going to fail. No, they're going to want some negotiation. So we are now have to be in a collaboration, not just with the Massachusetts teachers and the Massachusetts education and standards writers. We are now in a consortium with 10 or 11 other states negotiating our cut scores, or our scores to pass. So if we want to raise our scores,
isn't that affirmative action?
The Department of what?
Isn't that affirmative action?
No, it's not different. No, it's a consortium. It's like, you know, when you buy in bulk, you're together, you're together, you buy in bulk, so you buy a certain whatever. But no, this is a consortium. We're together. We're now park consortiums. We have to abide by the park rules. Now remember, park and Common Core is trademarked. We cannot change it. So it is here. And a lot of people will say, well, we can add 15%. I have not spoke to one teacher, and I just went to the convention, there was 1,200 of them, that said, you know what? I think we're gonna just add 15%, because I'm gonna have so much time after I finish all those Common Core standards, that I'll have all these great things to teach your kids. No, they're gonna teach to the test. Now, their evaluations are tied to the test, and they are not gonna deviate. So if you think your kids is gonna get a 15% more, you're wrong. So let me just open it up for questions. Ken?
Have you talked to your daughter's English teacher about having to read two economics books?
Yes.
I can't believe an English teacher would be happy with this.
She said, she actually, I'm not going to say who it is because I don't know if she'd want me to, but I don't know who her English teacher is. There's only two that teach this course. And one of the people that teach said to me, this is Common Core.
Wow.
Okay? She is not an advocate of Common Core. She is very outspoken in the union against Common Core. So she's an ally of mine, but she doesn't have the control. Okay.
Now, what's the name of this firm that does the test?
It's Pearson Publishing.
Yes. Yeah.
They're out of England.
Okay.
They own probably the majority of, they're buying up every publishing company there is.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they were given money by the Gates Foundation
Oh,
and the
okay.
Department of Ed to put a test together to be aligned with Common Core. And their test is called PARC.
Right.
So, and there's another test out there called Smarter Balance. So there's two that are Common Core, but states are even dropping out of Common Core now. So you're getting, Ohio is very close to dropping out. We've got South Carolina dropped out. Bobby Jingle's trying to, all that problem he's happening in Louisiana, he's trying to get them out through executive order. So that's a really good question. If you get to ever get a question at any of these gubernatorial debates. If elected, would you, through executive order, pull us out of Common Core?
I have a real good question for you. Since over the last, Maggie's son, school teacher for Phillips Exeter Academy, before her, Lynch, school teacher, all right? These are the governors of the state, and for the last 12 years, we've had nothing but teachers or wannabe teachers that are all for this Common Core craziness, all right? Teaching our kids, and one of their root things is let's drug out all the kids and bring their intellect down so they match the Common Core curriculum 100%.
Well, I don't know about drugging them out, but I can tell you that their ideal thing is that every child in the same grade throughout the state will be on the same page at the same time. So that's their goal. John.
Donna, thank you for what you're doing. I know people personally who are teachers in Massachusetts and they hate Common Core.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do to activate them? What's the barriers to getting them? And probably you had peer pressure.
Okay.
Have you had any experience with
Yes.
getting them activated and getting their voice heard?
Okay, so back in December, good story. I have a friend that's a union member and a delegate of the local EAW, which is the Worcester Union, and called me up and said, would you speak in front of our delegates? I said, what? You didn't even endorse me. What do you mean? Speaking? No, they did endorse me. I didn't say that, but that was kind of the gist of it. And I said, rise above it. This is about Common Core. So I did, and I did talk to them, John. I spoke in front of 81 delegates, and in the 11th hour before I was going to speak, I assumed I was just speaking to the audience. And the administration sent in 3 of the administrators from downtown in Worcester to speak about the benefits of PARC testing. So I got up there first, and then the 2 of them, and then they had one, I want to say planted in the audience, and I had to call her out and say, you're not a teacher, you're an administrator, I know you why you're here, and she was all, we had all this stuff happening. So I received applauses, and they were booing the administration. So that got me I've been able to get to the union. And so EAW put out, I asked them to put out a no confidence in PARC for Worcester, and they did. So Worcester has a no confidence in PARC, but the school committee didn't give a shit, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? They didn't care. So then they elected me to become a delegate at the state convention. And interesting enough, they asked me to speak about the park thing. I didn't get to do it because there was too many people, but I did speak to one issue in front of 1,200 people, and that was the way they were allocating their PR money. And they said they were going to go after Charlie Baker, and they were going to go after the Republicans with all this money, money, money. And I get up there and say, so will you go after the Democratic candidates as well that do not like children, that are for the Common Core? And I got a round of applause. I thought I was going to get booed. 1,200 people. So the teachers are on board, but they're also gag ordered, because they are not to speak about it. If anybody comes to their class and talks about Common Core, you send them right to the principal. And the principal who's on board with Common Core will give you all the talking points from the Department of Ed and calm you down. The best thing you can do is, I have had teachers that are courageous enough, but they could in fact get their job. I think it has to come from the parents holding the signs up, and also too is we need to replace the school committee members immediately. In May, we will have more elections locally. We have to target these. They know who they are now, because I've already said we're targeting you. And they're like, whoa. You know, and a lot of these votes are only, in some communities, if you think about your school committee votes, what's it, 50, 100 people? That's it. That's doable. It's not like the city when we have to get thousands and thousands of votes to get elected. In towns, sometimes it's a write-in. No one even wants to run for school committee because it doesn't pay, and it's, you know, no rewards. But we really need, that's what we need to do. So we encourage the parent, I'll get you this. We encourage the teachers to come to Peg's talk when we have her, because they'll really learn a lot about it. And when we have our big forums, we have a lot of teachers there, and we have a lot of administrators, and we've been very blessed with that. They want to come to they may start the union. I've been told by the union president that she will not align with any right-wing group, but she keeps a close look on everything that we're doing and agrees with what we're doing. So we can't align with them, but we can, as citizens, taxpayers, and parents, we can just do our thing. And you holding your sign, while you're out there holding your sign, you might get a union person or a teacher beside you saying thank you, because they know what we're doing out there. And we are doing we really got a lot of presence in giving us a little bit of, you know, we're starting to get a little kickback. You know, if you read that a Globe article just recently, North Shore Globe wrote an article about our group. And if you guys those of you that read the comment sections, you can imagine how we got slammed in the comment section about who we were. I mean, I was like, that's not who we are, but you know. So it's interesting. But the thing is, I think what you do is you keep mentioning to the teachers, you keep talking to the teachers, you keep saying, I don't agree with Common Core. You look at the homework, you bring the homework home, you post the homework on Facebook, you get the likes. The teachers, when they see things go viral, they're nervous. And you keep using facts. This is what happened at Flag Street School in Worcester in 6th grade. This is my kid's class. I want you all to know about this. That's only a fact.
Right.
Nothing else. We're showing the facts. Okay.
Well, first I want to thank you for explaining why when I turned on Rush at 2 o'clock he was calling Hemingway a drunken communist.
Yes. That's why. Yeah.
In your discussion with some of the people in the state legislature, have you tried pointing out that we've just been down this road where we had something working in Massachusetts and we went to the federal version and it's cost us what? I'm talking about the health connector. You know, it's cost us what, $100 million, something like that? And you know, are we learning? You know, can we learn from this experience?
Well, one of the things about the healthcare is that, remember, there was votes on that. We had congressmen that voted. We had votes on that. Okay, we were engaged. We had no legislative votes on Common Core. That was just slid in. So the thing is, this is what you'll hear. Oh, it's a done deal. Let's just live with it. Can't be that bad. This is what we're hearing. Oh, you're misinformed. You really don't know it. You don't really understand standards. You know, you get that like ditzy, like, who are you? You know, misinformed. And what you have to just keep coming back and say, you know what? Thank you for expressing your viewpoint, but I am informed. I do know my rights. I am a parent, I don't like Common Core, I want as least government involvement as possible, and I'm gonna just keep talking about it. Now, I'm telling you, talk shows are great, keep going on the talk shows, they do not wanna bring up Common Core. It's too toxic. It's too toxic. So you keep bringing it up and you say, oh, you know, Common Core, this and that, and sometimes they won't let you on because you wanna talk about Common Core. Of course, in the right-wing arena, they'll bring it up, but if you want to go into more of the moderate shows like Jordan, or other people that would, he may and may not bring it up. Today he was forced to bring it up, you know, because a caller called in about it, but he doesn't like to bring it up. So I say keep bringing it up, you keep just bringing it up everywhere you go, talk about it. I mean, if I didn't talk to that woman in that, I don't know, hippie store, I would not have known what Maine was doing, nor would we've been collaborating on this wonderful event. So you gotta constantly bring it up. What do you think about the new Common Core standards? What are you talking about? Hey, let me tell you what's happening. And you have to soft sell it. You have to be kind and passionate. And we've learned this. All of you have learned this by being activists. We know we can't go out there and bring a fact sheet because then they're like, oh my God, you know. So you come up with the feeling words. You know, I feel that this isn't good for our kids. You know, instead of saying we know it's not good, because there's a lot of misunderstanding with Common Core, and you have to say, you know what, I understand that, but why would we go as number one in Massachusetts? Why would we take a system that's already working? Why don't we just tweak it? And we would have a vested interest in it. And that's a big, you know, it's a big problem. But I think the more we talk about it, the more it's being implemented, the more you're finding out that people are disliking it. And if they know about that there's more people that dislike it, then they're willing to open up. And that's the thing, when we first started this, people were frightened. Now, it's like people are coming out of the woodwork talking about it, and that's the good thing. That's the really good thing. So I say keep talking about it. You know, if you really want to get involved with it, come see me. I'd love to have you pass out something somewhere to some school at some time. You know, we're always doing something. We do a lot of emailing stuff too, so if you want to email, that's always something that we could use people.
We have a big advantage in Massachusetts that they don't have in other states. And when Massachusetts fights back against the corrupt socialist establishment, other states that are less socialist than Massachusetts say, hey, we can do it too. So to take the responsibility to take the lead in this. And the big advantage that we have that spreads across the political spectrum of parents and other residents in Massachusetts with regard to agreement is that Massachusetts has probably the strongest tradition of local control of education of any state in the nation. Used to be, until they started having a State Department of Education brought more things in, that the local teachers would choose their own textbooks, unlike the state of Texas, which would mandate the textbooks for the schools throughout the state. So Massachusetts had that strong control at the local level with the school boards, and a lot of people grew up being used to that, and as they became adults and became voters, school committee members and parents, that was ingrained in them, and it's still there. So every time somebody asks me about Common Core, I make sure I point out the local control of education in Massachusetts, and Common Core is one of the final steps to finish that off and destroy it and make the same kind of thing that you have in totalitarian governments where education is run from the top.
Let me just make a point on that. State statutes right now, the only thing a school district has to do is they have to participate in the state test. Now right now the state test is the MCAS, but it becomes the PARC, it's a PARC. But according to Massachusetts state statute, they do not have to participate in any standards. They can, in fact, write their own standards, even now with Common Core. But we don't have any district that have school committee members with backbones that are willing to go out there and say, let's go back to the 2004 Massachusetts standards, and, you know, because now all the books, they're all written Common Core concepts. If you notice, if you see any books coming home with your kids, they're Common Core aligned. So I mean, I'm surprised like Greenfield or Northampton or Cambridge don't just break away, and they may, because they're probably the strongest communities for rebellion of local control. They want to do it their way, and rightfully so, they have the right to. So as much as we think that this is going to equal, well, we don't, but that they think it's going to equalize education across the nation, it's going to cause more and more of a social economic gap in education, and kids are going to get discouraged. Now the interesting thing, and then I'll wrap it up, is that there were Catholic schools that adopted the Common Core in some parts of the state, and they're out of their mind. And the other day, I was with a Catholic school mom advocate against Common Core, and she's like a real powerhouse. She was at the State House with us when we were testifying against or in support of Keiko Oro's bill for more accountability on the PARCC testing. And she said that there was a school that she went to, she sent her kids to, and there were 4 moms, and they were so angry about Common Core. What do you think they did? Started their own school. So in Natick, we have our first non-Common Core school, started by 4 moms. It's called St. Benedict's, I think, and it's in Natick. And they just had to move out of one place because it was too small, because they're going to another place. So as soon as, I think this is going to create a new market of people that may not want to, you know, and whether, you know, it's not going to be public, because you can't do it in a public realm, but in a semi-private Catholic realm, it might be a doable thing. All different, these people are dealing, all different ways people are dealing with it, but there's a lot of very, very upset parents out there with this, and you know, like you say, I can't do this. This is Common Core, you know, aligned. We got to do this. Is Common Core. This is so the teachers now can just say we can't do anything. You know, when we went to talk about books at our school, we don't want that book in our library. We don't want this and that, and they would have a discussion. They pull it out. They wouldn't pull it out. Now they can. The default is, well, it's part of the Common Core curriculum. Yeah. So it's encouraging, because we're seeing a lot of states really doing some great things, and we are just building our base, trying to do more and more. So I appreciate you all listening tonight, and thank you. And if anybody's interested in helping out, just let me know. Thanks.
Thank you, Donna. You know, we are blessed that we have such people as Donna and Pat, who really carry these issue fights forward. You know, every day we are beset by all sorts of troubles. I mean, there's that horrible incident that's happening half a world away with Isley, or whatever they're calling themselves this week. Why don't we just agree to call them silly? Or any of these other things. And it can be somewhat overwhelming, and most of us actually kind of feel that that's almost a design, that it's designed to be overwhelming. But one of the reasons why we have these meetings, and why these meetings are so important, is to get together so that we know that we're not just one lone guy throwing bricks against a TV and having conversations in my car with radio show dogs who don't answer the phone when I call them. I don't understand. But this is a critical point for us as the Worcester Tea Party. The Worcester Tea Party is also critically involved in standing up to smart meters. Again, I'd like to introduce Pat Burke from Halt Smart Meters. She'll be here to talk to us a little bit about this topic. I know I'm loud, but I'm really a good guy. I'm not scary at all. Now, do you need an easel for this? We do have an easel.
Yeah, I think that was what you were back.
They bring the beer to us. Would this work for you? Might this work for you?
Yeah, I think so. Is it okay if I sit?
If that's necessary, sir. Or if that's, you know, give Chris a second.
Yeah, it's better not to, thanks.
Get her out of the way here.
Speak loud and proud.
much for inviting me. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have my back to you guys. A lot of us who are working on the smart meter issue are also very concerned about Common Core. And one of the things that we were discussing in this group, it seems like different states have been targeted for different experiments, but in Iowa, they're going to be putting heart monitors on the children in phys ed classes to make sure that they're not slacking off and to monitor that they're getting enough exercise during class. And part of Common Core is this installation of wireless technologies in the classrooms. And in the United States, our radio frequency limits are very different from some of the ones in other countries. Issues with the underlying issues with the smart meters as well. So, in my opinion, we are at the stage that we were at when the evidence was very clear that there were health issues with cigarette smoke, but we're at the point where we're still arguing the point. And the United States scientific and legal community didn't resolve the cigarette smoke issue for over 60 years, which really meant that our scientific inquiry was designed to suppress the evidence. And what we're calling it is, quote unquote, decision-based evidence making rather than evidence-based decision making. And what happened in the state of Massachusetts is the Worcester community was selected to be the site for this practice of evidence-based, did I say that backwards, of decision-based evidence making about the smart meters. So if you're not familiar with the smart meters, I'll go over that really quickly and then we'll talk a little bit more about Worcester. What a smart meter is the equivalent of sort of a cell phone on the side of your house, one for gas, one for water, and one for electricity. And it will make between 2 to 15 seconds, and that data that will go to the utility company and will tell them when and how you're using your electricity all throughout the day and night. And the meters are being installed in different communities. It's very heavily deployed already in California, and they were deployed in 2009 as a result of stimulus funding. I was living there, I got extremely sick, and I saw other people who got extremely sick when the program went in. In Maine also, those were the two most heavily deployed. Everywhere that these meters have been deployed, people have registered health complaints, and in virtually every state, the Tea Party has been playing a very significant part. They've been interveners with the Department of Public Utilities, etc. And the issue for the Tea Party has been the privacy issue. We feel that this is a surveillance system flying under the banner of sustainability, and that this agenda has kind of moved forward. It didn't matter whether a Democrat or Republican was in office, but that it's been moving forward. What's happened in the state of Massachusetts is in the last 10 years, a lot of utility meters were replaced with a new wireless meter. And the homeowner was told that the meter reader didn't have to come to the door anymore, you didn't have to shovel, you didn't have to worry about your dog biting the meter reader, and that it would send a signal. So a truck would come through the neighborhood and send a signal out and get the data. What's happened is all these meters are transmitting all the time now. And this was never authorized by the Department of Public Utilities, it was never disclosed to the communities, but many people have purchased a radio frequency detector, especially people like myself who have health issues, and we know that these meters are transmitting all the time, and we suspect that data is already being collected and people have not been informed, which is a major violation of the Fourth Amendment. So what happens with these meters is 15,000 of these in Worcester right now. The two-way meter has two transmitters on it, and one of them talks from house to house to house. It transmits in all directions all the time, and it sends the data about what's going on in the house. And then the second transmitter will communicate with the home, inside the home. And it will be able to both communicate with and control your appliances. So if the utility company decides that we have a very serious situation where we're going to have a brownout and they want to, it's quote unquote island, they want to send the energy to the hospital, they will have the capacity to limit your ability to use electricity in your home. This is not how it's being portrayed to the community. What you're being told is you'll have more information about your utility usage. Why do you need that information? You need that information because we're going to tiered pricing structures and peak use pricing structures. So there's been a lot of information in the news in the last couple of weeks. I don't know if anyone has seen it. The Conservation Law Foundation has come out against the 6 New England governors who met behind closed doors to move forward the Kinder Morgan gas pipeline and also Northern Pass, which is bringing hydropower down from Canada. So no input from citizens, nothing. They're not elected. They met behind closed doors and started wheeling and dealing these major initiatives. They did the same thing with the smart meters. And when they met in 2000, I believe it was, they decided that non-prime time would be from 11 at night till 7 in the morning. And then if you used your electricity from 7 in the morning till 11 at night, you'd be paying a higher rate.
Right.
So it's a behavior modification. And what you'll see is all these different studies. Do we give people a peak rebate? Do we charge them more? Do we charge them, what's the psychological process? And one of the pieces of the Worcester pilot program is people can either sign up to be on this critical peak period, which means, we have a heat wave tomorrow, the utility sends out something saying, cut down your usage, so the person goes to their cell phone and overrides their pool pump or their thermostat at home on their air conditioner. That's the critical peak period. The other pricing structure is the time of use. But what happened was, of course, the pilot program is not using the time of that the New England governors want to use. So they're only surcharging people, I think, from 10 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. Now, MIT already did a study and said that this was absolutely ridiculous. Because what will happen, obviously, is at 11 o'clock on their dishwasher or their turn on their dishwasher or their air conditioner, or at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, at 6 o'clock in the morning, an hour ahead. They said this is going to crash the grid. So already we're seeing that the assumptions that were made about the smart meters and the smart grid are being challenged. And two of the big issues that I'm very aware of in Worcester is, first of all, they didn't do any modeling for the different kinds of homes, at least that we know of. So for example, there's a woman who lives near the airport who's been extraordinarily sick since this whole thing started. She doesn't have a meter on her house, but the Albanian family next door, which probably has no understanding of this pilot program, has a meter right outside her bedroom window. So she can't even opt out. She's getting sick from her neighbor's participation in the pilot, and they probably don't even know what the heck is going on. She happens to have a tin roof in her kitchen. It's an antique home. I went in there with my meter. It's clear to me she's got a wireless water meter in her basement, that her house is a hot spot because the radiation is bouncing off of her kitchen and off of her appliances. She's cooking in her kitchen, and then her bedroom, the box spring, the metal in the box spring is picking up the radiation that's bouncing off the kitchen. We have aluminum houses, we have houses that are wooden, that are wet in the rain, and what's happened whenever these meters have been installed is a certain number of people have gotten sick, but what they're calling us is the tinfoil hat brigade, as you said before, and they're just discounting that people are having any health issues rather than trying to figure out what it might be. It's clear to me, as a person who's reacting to the radio frequencies, that we have different sensitivities, and I compare this to the breed of dogs. I've had a couple of different dogs. The last one I had was a herder, and he went ballistic whenever there was going to be a thunder and lightning storm, hours ahead of time, because he could feel it. His body went into a stress response, and I believe that I go into that kind of response as well. It's not that I have a thought or see somebody with a cell phone or see a tower. It's today when I was driving to Worcester and I got near the hospital on Route 9, I started to feel sick. And when I was living in the North Shore last year, that happened to me in Ipswich. And if I had been living in Ipswich, I would have had to move. I don't go to any businesses in Ipswich anymore because the radio frequency level was higher there and it was high and making me sick. And I can feel now when I come to Worcester, because I've been coming here for the last year or so, there are certain points in the city that are really hot spots. So the smart meters, there's really about any issue really you can pick, but one is cost. It'll be about $7.6 billion to deploy in Massachusetts if we multiply out what we're spending in Worcester, paid for by the ratepayers, so that we'll have to pay more for our electricity. There's the security issue. As I mentioned, the idea is that people can wirelessly control their appliances at home. That means that it can be hacked. There's a safety issue. There have been fires and issues with appliances where the meters have been installed. There's the health issue, and there's the privacy issue, which is, again, very big with the Tea Party group. So the New England governors right now, this issue with both Northern Pass and the Kinder Morgan pipeline, if you don't know, Don Berwick's wife, Ann Berwick, is the chair of the DPU. So she is a very significant target for those of us who are opposing everything public Department of Public Utilities is pursuing. And we had kind of an interesting experience. We went to testify to the DPU against opt-out bills, because that's one of the things that's happening in the different states right now. They just want to say, we're going to have to put this in, but we'll just charge people opt-out fees who don't want it. And then we had they put the bill out on December 23rd. Nobody knew about it. Mandated smart meters all across Massachusetts. Now, the purpose of the Worcester pilot program was it was supposed to prove the efficacy of the smart meters. Technically, the pilot hasn't even started yet because there was so much opposition in the Torrey Fort neighborhood. They couldn't get all the infrastructure installed. They're over a year behind schedule now. And the DPU said something along the lines of, you know, we've learned a lot from the Worcester pilot program. Well, what did they learn? They had Jennifer Flanagan put a bill out in Massachusetts overriding zoning protections in communities for wireless antennas. Wow. So the resistance that occurred in Worcester informed the legislature to try to go ahead and put in these protections for the smart meter program. The bill did not pass because there was a tremendous amount of opposition. So the Torrey Fort neighborhood, if you haven't taken a ride through there, it's very alarming. If you go see what happened there, I encourage you to take a look. The substation was quadrupled in size, and it's been in a violation of sound ordinances now for 2 years. The neighbor who was living next door kept complaining that he had this sound in his home. And so now they're going to put up King Kong walls, like the sound barriers that you see on the highway, because they did not engineer the substation properly to begin with. Who's going to pay for that? We're going to pay for that. This pilot program was $48 million. It's already over, beyond schedule. And I think it really is an opportunity for Worcester residents to start asking some very serious questions about what's happened here in your community. So they're supposed to put up these walls. They moved the tower that was supposed to, it was a tower that was supposed to have 5 microwave antennas on it. They're putting it in the church in Tatnick Square, 250 feet from an elementary school. Mm-hmm. So how they morphed, is it congregational? Yes. So how it morphed from 5 different antennas to one in a church tower, we're not exactly sure. We believe there's probably other boosters that are going in along the way. This pilot program in Worcester was not just a pilot program for the 15,000 meters. They put in 242 WiMAX antennas. So they basically put in a Wi-Fi system, which we're describing as radiation without representation, because you're not able to access it, but you're being exposed to the frequencies.
To me, it sounds like what they did. I don't know if they did it down here in Mass, but usually Mass is a pilot program for what they do in New Hampshire. But in New Hampshire, they mandated that all the businesses have, and larger homes have the new fireboxes with the radio signal instead of the direct connection over the wire to the fire station in order to do that, which has cost $100,000 to change over.
Right. Yeah, the wireless industry in the United States is really a bit of a runaway train right now. And on Monday, the center put out a press release stating that the radio frequency limits for cell phones are inadequate. They haven't been upgraded since 1996. It was rescinded today. This keeps happening over and over again. The scientists who are coming forward talking about the radio frequency limits are being attacked and demeaned. And this is a poster of the radio frequency exposure limits. So you have Austria, Liechtenstein, Belgium, Italy. The United States is here. And what's happened is this organization, it's the International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection. Other countries are just ignoring it because they recognize that the radio frequency exposure limits, which were set by the military, are not appropriate for pregnant women, children, people who have medical challenges. So this is what I was saying in the beginning, what I think is happening is the wireless industry is trying to gain as much market share as it can for as long as it can, as quickly as it can. But instead of hiring marketers, they're calling it sustainability, and they're trying to get everybody to put the equivalent of 3 cell phones on their home, putting all this wireless into the schools. Italy is hardwired, they're not wired, they're not using radio frequency. Germany now has 31% as of today of its energy from renewable sources. They have smart meters, but they are completely against the state abuse of power, so they will not let the state accumulate all this data about what's happening in the house.
Where does it stop then?
Pardon me?
Where does it stop then? At the local?
In Germany, it's inside the house. The homeowner just has the information. You can buy a monitor like at Home Depot that tells you what's going on in your house.
Okay,
but
so the government doesn't have anything to do with what's in that
Right. But in the United States, they're collecting these profiles. So let's say you're a legislator from Massachusetts and you have, an apartment in here and your wife is somewhere else, and they realize, okay, 2 people took a shower, somebody used a hair dryer, there were 2 cell phones there, and now they're blackmailing that guy because he's having an affair with somebody. This is the kind of stuff that's happening. So even if people are not concerned about the privacy, which we find many people are not, they want the wireless technologies and they don't care about the privacy issue, there are certain questions. 2 very Worcester with concerns in Worcester, which if I was a Worcester voter, I would just be absolutely off the wall. One is the assessor's report. The assessor wrote a report saying that there's no impact on property value from the smart meters and from the antennas. So the National Institute for Science, Law, and Public Policy did an extensive survey, and people don't want to buy houses next to microwave antennas. But you're not seeing a lot of information coming out from industries. They're not doing those kinds of surveys because they don't want to know the answers. But he said that he surveyed other states. We filed a Freedom of Information Act request because we want to see the studies that he says that he was quoting, and we still have not heard back, and it's beyond the period of time where he should have responded. So we've got to figure out what's the next step is. The other is that the Worcester Health Department abominable report stating discounting anybody's health concerns, and they were both at maybe a 6th grade reading level, and really just what's happening is sort of this bullying thing is the 5 countries in the military, 5 in the military, it's the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, they're the United States. They're the ones with the sky-high RF limits. They're the ones producing the science, saying that this is including issues with autism, childhood cancer, leukemia, all these other issues. The scientists who are coming forward saying it's causing double DNA breaks, it's breaching the blood-brain barrier. They're really being ridiculed. They're losing their funding. Their labs are being shut down. So where we're at right now is we're trying to get the National Institute for Law and Public Policy to raise the same objections to the pilot program that they have to these other initiatives by the New England governors. We also have a petition to the Attorney General asking her to investigate the Worcester pilot program. I know. Well, yeah, well, no, it's interesting because the DP has tried to undermine the Attorney General because Berwick's husband is running for governor, so they're trying to distance themselves. But and in Worcester, we're trying to sort of pin down different people's happening to find out how this happened. We filed another Freedom of Information Act request to the DPU to find out how many people had opted out of the Worcester pilot program, because this is supposed to be the model for the whole state, and we wanted to verify. Worcester pilot was very unusual. The other pilot programs, they started, if people dropped out, it just got smaller and smaller and smaller. Worcester, they kept going to another house over 2 years. So everybody who opted out, they just replaced them. We had to pay for that installation, the deinstallation, everything that was supposed to go on the homeowner. We didn't get an answer, but they sent us a copy of the PowerPoint the National Grid did. And what they said is they've engaged influence leveragers in the community to impact the community with WPI, Clark University, also the Worcester City Council, and the Worcester Business Journal. So we sent letters to the Worcester Business Journal. We've been in touch with the universities. We have not had much luck, but what we see is this is the strategy. They go in and they get the union involved in one of these issues, and then the union fights against its own community. If you've gone to any of the things about the pipelines, you will see that happening too. So basically, we want to ask all of the people running for office in Worcester what their position is on the smart meter program, how this community got targeted for it and why, who made those decisions. We think it was more, from the city manager's side of things. And we'd like to get, some follow-up, particularly in areas, as I said, where we see that the Worcester community has been subjected to this decision-based evidence making. So, yep.
If you're converting to gas from oil or something to that effect, is there anything you could say or do to prevent that from putting one on your house? Well,
the DPU already approved opt-out tariffs for National Grid. If National Grid is your company, I believe it's $67 to have the meter changed, to not have a wireless transmitter, and then I think it's $15 a month for them to read it. Because the standard is going to be wireless for the state if this goes forward, but they are at this point saying that each of the companies needs to file opt-out tariffs, and National Grid was the first one to do it.
And so, is there certain things you should say? Is it a smart meter? Is a smart meter more of a lingo, or is that actually what they're called?
That's a really good question. The question is to ask is does it have a radio transmitter in it? And it should have an FCC ID number if it has a transmitter, but right now the standard is wireless for all the new gas infrastructure.
Thank you.
So, and also we found out all the new accounts in Worcester are getting smart meters now too. So we feel like the pilot has just extended beyond its parameters. On our website, Hall 10B Smart Meters, we have the approved map. It's gone way beyond where it was supposed to be in terms of coverage. It's also extended into Grafton. And we think part of the reason is because so many people opted out. So this is a flyer that your neighbors made. It's from Worcester Opts Out, and it just has 12 questions on it with some basic information. They'll pass that along to you, and they're sort of based out of the Tatnick neighborhood, but they're one of the prime forces. They made the signs that you see around town and some of the other things. So, anyone else have questions? Yeah.
Is anybody exploring the technology for jamming?
For jamming?
For example, if they put one on the edge of your house, if you put a couple of neodymium disc magnets there, will that interfere with it?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
It might be worth doing to check into that.
Yeah. I know there are a lot of people trying to shield their homes. That's one of the big things right now is people are trying to protect themselves from the radio frequencies.